Lost Wand. Episode 1. The Forager Fairy. It was a beautiful summer's day. The sun was shining brightly, and the smell of summer meadows filled the air. In the woods it was cool and shady. I followed a path down to a clearing where I spotted this old elm tree. At the base of the tree, next to this arum plant, there was a hollow, and when I looked inside, I found a fairy home. It looked like a little store. Tiny shelves were stacked high with all manner of plants, herbs, seeds and flowers. Some were stored in tiny glass jars. Some had been hung up to dry. Between the shelves were pots of herbs and baskets of flowers. Another shelf held more seeds and tiny little fruits. I wondered, who could this magical little pantry belong to? I did not dare touch anything for fear of disturbing the neatly arranged goods, but left things as they were and decided to explore some more. Around the other side of the elm tree, I noticed there was something in between a gap in the roots. It looked like a very small bundle of twisted cord. And then I spotted something else right next to the tree. It was a miniature spinning wheel. This also must belong to the fairy who lives here. I know how camera-shy fairies are, and so I put down my camera and took out my sketchbook and began to draw. And that was when something magical happened. Suddenly, as if by magic, a tiny figure appeared. She had a tangle of twigs on her head and wore a mossy green suit that looked like it had been made from leaves. She was no bigger than the palm of my hand, but her presence radiated with a gentle, magical energy. A glimpse of shimmering wings told me that this was a fairy. She sat down at the wheel and began to spin. She took a bundle of shimmering web from the small basket and fed it onto the spinning wheel. I watched entranced as she worked skillfully on the wheel, creating a silvery gossamer thread. Then, all of a sudden, she looked up, and her emerald green eyes met mine. "Hello there," she exclaimed. She stood up from her spinning wheel. "I'm Fidelia." I could barely contain my astonishment, but curiosity overtook my amazement, and I asked her, "Are you a fairy?" "I am what you would call a fairy forager to be exact," Fidelia replied. "I gather herbs, berries and fruits and share them with the residents of the woods." A woodlouse appeared and scuttled to her side. She bent down on one knee and tickled his tummy. "This is Spud," she said, "my faithful companion." I couldn't help noticing that she was not carrying a wand. I asked her about it, and Fidelia's expression turned wistful. "I've lost my wand," she said. "It's the source of my magic, my connection to the elements. Without it, my powers are greatly diminished." She went on to explain that she had not been able to look for her wand, as she had been so busy making deliveries of her foraged goods to the fairies of the forest. Poor Fidelia, she looked so worried. Determined to help, I offered my assistance. Immediately her face lit up and she graciously accepted. "And I know who can help us," she said. "My friend Philip Glenfern. He's a spell maker, and he can make a finding spell for my wand. Flip lives in an old oak tree on the edge of the woods. The door to his home is set into the tree and is surrounded by moss and ivy. Could you go and ask him for his help while I make my delivery?" I agreed immediately. All I needed to do now was find Flip's home. And I'll tell you all about that in the next chapter. of the Lost Wand. I hope you'll join me next time in my fairy adventures in the woods. Today's episode was brought to you by the Arum Plant.